myself, I haven't been too fair. Yeah, bless my soul, gonna take life easy, like a river flowing over big old rocks. I've gotta find my way down to that lake that's calm and clear, and quit putting myself through life's hard knocks. I'll be floating on a cloud, sailing with the breeze, laughing in the sunshine, dancing with the trees. Faced with any problem, I'll handle it with ease, no matter what the outcome. Well, I won't let it torture me, no, bless my soul, gonna take life easy. In my song, you won't hear no blues. Take it as it comes, yeah, that's the way it's gonna be. Hey, don't despair, you can be there too. Oh, talk to us, Don. Let's hear it again. I'll be floating on a cloud, sailing with the breeze, laughing in the sunshine, dancing with the trees. Faced with any problem, I'll handle it with ease, no matter what the outcome. I won't let it torture me, no, bless my soul, gonna take life easy. Lord, I know it can be so easy. Just lighten up, don't take it all so serious. Bless my soul, gonna take life easy. Bless my soul, I'm gonna take life easy. Yeah. Bless my soul, I'm gonna take life easy.
Dave De La Rosa, you bless our soul every Sunday. Would you give it up for this Unity Band that blesses us over and over and over again? Welcome this beautiful day. I would say spring is certainly here. We had someone here last service from Chicago. They said it is snowing there. I'm glad to be here. So welcome to this beautiful, beautiful day. We begin our time together in the recognition that there is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in our life, and that we call that God, and that God is an expression of good omnipotence. Would you join me in this statement of what we are about? We are radically inclusive, spiritually progressive, and socially responsive. I invite you to join in an opening prayer. As we come together this day, we do so in the spirit of I am that I am. In the recognition that this one life expresses itself through many different forms, through many recreations of creation. As we recognize ourselves as a part of all that is, we realize that we contain an awareness that we are more than this physical being. And that there is an awareness that we are both an inlet and an outlet for this great life. Today we open to what it means to be a true mystic, a spiritual master, and a peacemaker in our own life as we look through the lives of others. And for this day of celebrating, of blessing, and of being blessed, we're truly grateful. Thank you, God, and so it is. Amen. I invite you to stand as you're able and join in our opening song that says, Spirit is in this place. Here we go. We Raising the roof this morning. Take this opportunity to greet those around you with a holy handshake or a holy hug. Welcome to the light, the love of unity. Happy Sunday. Hold your head up high. Don't you know you walk with God? We're so blessed with this Unity Band. We have Don joining us today on harmonica, Dave, Richard, Joel, Pete, and Cat Williams. Would you give them our love? Thank you for being here today. We'd like to extend a special welcome to anyone who may be here for the first time or perhaps for the first time in a really long time. If you just raise your hand, we'd like to extend a connections card to you. Hold your hand up. Unity folks lovingly point to those people that raise their hand so we can find them and give them a card and a pen. There's one over this way. If you want to get some morning walking in, you can join the welcoming team. So we want to extend that special welcome. There's a heart. If you'd like to wear that heart, it will allow us to acknowledge you as being a newcomer, and we can make ourselves available to welcome you. There's also a welcome center out in the lobby. There's packets of information. Anyone can pick those up. If any of you have questions or need information, just stop at that welcome center. As we welcome you, as we welcome each and every one, we also want to turn and give a wave to the camera. Those who are joining us on live stream, we've got folks now from 12 different countries that are have been streaming in. So we want to bless folks from wherever you are and whenever you see this message. We extend this blessing to you that says, we love you, we bless you, we appreciate you, and we behold the divinity in you. We truly thank you for being here. Reverend Laura Collins, who is our associate minister, who does so many wonderful things with us, is going to share our announcements among a few many other things. Would you please welcome Reverend Laura Collins?
Thank you. Good morning. As usual, we have a lot of fun things going on here today and over the next few weeks. So let me just run through a few of those. And the first is today at 1:30, our very own Richard Schulman has a CD release concert. Woo! So he's getting his fingers warmed up to play some more sweet jazz for you this afternoon. Do you want to say anything about that, Richard, other than come?
This is my regular jazz trio, piano, bass, and drums. It's some really beautiful music and some music that swings. It's all music that I've written. The earliest pieces from the 70s, and the latest pieces are from 2015. So it's some wonderful music. I hope you can join us.
Thank you, Richard. This month continues to be our outreach for migrant workers. Oh. There's more. Wait, there's more.
For those of you who are not prepared to have for those of you who didn't bring your lunch, we are bringing some pizzas for those that want to stay for the concert and want to have sustenance.
Little extra incentive there. So April continues to be our outreach for our migrant workers. Israel from the Migrant Worker Program was here at the first service and will be back with us next week to pick up all of the things we've been collecting. Long sleeve shirts, broad rimmed hats, bandanas, things for all the folks who are going to be picking our fruits and vegetables this summer to work out in the sun. We also learned this morning tube tops are great for, tube socks, not tube tops. They don't want to wear tube tops. Tube socks are great for their arms. To protect their arms. Next month, Rev Darlene is going to do another one of her New to Unity classes from 6:30 to 8:30 on Thursday, May 9th. This is a chance, if you are new to Unity and you'd like a chance to ask questions, to hear a little more about the history of Unity and the history of this church in particular and what we're about, a chance to meet other people who are new, or just come get a refresher course or meet some of the new folks. We always have some longtime members who come as well, and it's always a fun event. And Darlene just shares so much knowledge, and it's fun to be able to talk to her and ask her your questions directly. So that's on May 9th. On May 19th, we will have our one service for our quarterly town hall meeting. That will be at 10:30, not 9:45 or 11:30, but 10:30 that day, and then we'll have the meeting after the 10:30 service. So remember to put it on your calendar. Our service that morning is at a different time. You can bring your bag lunch and stay through. And we'll be hearing an update on the feasibility study that you all agreed on at your February annual meeting. And then, speaking of changing service times, in June, right after Memorial Day, the first Sunday in June, June 2nd, we are going to go back to the service times that we used to have, which are 9:15 and 11 o'clock. We'll keep telling you so you can get used to the idea. 9:15 and 11 o'clock. And the main difference is the children's program will be at the 11 o'clock service instead of the early service then. And now I would like to invite forward your prayer chaplain team. I'd like to invite Carol Lane, William Marshall, Deborah Ogeest, Michelle Smith, Diane Swift, Michael Wackerly, and Diane West, and Thomas Sinker. Several of them were at the first service and not able to stay for the second service. So this is exactly half of our 8 prayer chaplains. Last month, the end of March, they went on a weekend-long retreat to be trained to be prayer chaplains. We have both new and returning prayer chaplains on this team. And it's quite a process that our prayer chaplains go through because we take very seriously this sense that they have of holding all of you in prayer, not just those of you who come individually to the prayer chapel for one-on-one prayer, and those of you who put your prayer concerns in the prayer box. They definitely hold those, but they also really hold the prayer consciousness for our whole congregation. They stand up during the meditation time and hold sacred space, and throughout the week they're doing that as well. In the book of Isaiah, the prophet is asked by God, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?" And Isaiah responds, "Here am I, send me." So your prayer chaplain team has responded to that call and said, "Here I am, I'm ready." I'm going to come down here so I can look at these folks and remind them what they have been committing to through their practice and through their training. In addition to the weekend training that you went on, you've committed to a daily spiritual journey based on love, faith, prayer, and gratitude. You've committed to demonstrate an active commitment to our ministry and our principles and beliefs, and to holding a spiritual space of possibility for others and for yourself, knowing and trusting that God is in all and through all. You've committed to prayer both with yourself and with others. You've committed to being loving listeners, to having and demonstrating a genuine interest in the well-being of all of the congregants here, as well as your own prayer chaplain team. And you've committed to holding all that is shared in strict confidence. And so I'd like to ask you these questions. In awareness of the activity of the Holy Spirit that has called you to this moment of commitment, I invite you to take that journey that we always talk about from your head down to your heart. And from that space, ask if your heart says yes to those commitments I just mentioned. And if so, please respond with the words, "I am," to the following questions. Are you willing to accept this commitment and this dedication? Are you willing to remember to open a space for God no matter what? Are you willing to do your best to stay prayed up? Are you willing to support the other members of your prayer chaplain team? Are you willing to practice self-care? Myrtle Fillmore wrote in Healing Letters, "As you learn to see the fullness of God's life and love and power and substance in others, you will know that you need not pour out your own for them. You will have the knowledge and the light to call their attention to what they have and prompt them to use it." So there is a song that arose sort of spontaneously when we were at our training that I had not included in the training. And I would like for us as a congregation to sing this Karen Drucker song to our prayer chaplains this morning.
You are the face of God. I hold you
close by offering this small gift to our prayer chaplains. It's a little coin that they can keep in their pockets as a reminder or put on their home altar. And on one side it says, "I believe in the power of prayer." And on the other side it says, "God is the answer to all our needs." So in gratitude and thanksgiving for your service, thank you to each of you. And yes, thank you.
New eyes, new way, new heart, new day, new eyes, new way, new heart, new day. Sing it with me. New eyes, new way, new heart, new day. Talking new eyes, talking new way, saying new heart, talking new day, new day. New day with me, oh, new eyes with me, new way to be, new heart and see, new day, new eyes, new way, new heart, new day. Talking new heart in a new day. New eyes to see the things I couldn't see. New ways to be that I couldn't be. New heart to feel what I can be. New day is an everyday. New eyes, new way, new heart in a new day. New eyes to see, new ways to be, new heart with me in a new day. New eyes, new way, new heart in a new day.
We are so blessed each and every Sunday for this Unity Band that lifts us higher and higher and higher. Would you give them our love again? Thank you to each and every one of you. New eyes, new way, new heart, new day. How many of you can relate to the bumper sticker that says, yeah, born again, and again, and again, and again, and again? That it's an every day to be born anew, new eyes, new way, new heart, new day. It's a very fitting song this Sunday as we reach the culmination of a spring and early spring series where we have been looking at the lives of different individual mystics, masters, and peacemakers. Now, I'll speak about the elephant in the room for some of you that weren't here Easter, because a lot of you were looking. I was walking, and you know what happens if you encounter a pothole you're not looking at when you're walking? It tends to win. And so, for the first time in my life, I'm healing with a broken bone. So I'm doing great. It's doing what it does. It heals, but you'll see me holding on, and I appreciate your prayers and all of that. So thank you. But I like to move around. And this is saying, be still and know that it's okay. So very fitting today as the culmination of this spring series where we've looked at mystics, spiritual masters, and peacemakers. And the whole purpose has been, we've looked at from Gandhi to Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., Elizabeth Fry. Last week we looked at the life and the teachings of Jesus. And today I will introduce someone that some of you will know and many of you may not really. And I hope that you will find something inspiring. But most of all, the point is, above all things, for us to discover that each and every one of us are mystics. What is it to be a mystic? A mystic is one who knows they are one with God and all that is. How many of you know that? You know that you're one with God and all that is. We're growing into that embodied awareness, but that's what a mystic is. It's to know that oneness. A spiritual master is one who is mastering the self, what some people call the lower self, the selfish desires. It's mastering the self to allow the self to be used for higher purposes. How many of you have done any self-help work and still doing some working on that self? Well, as long as we have skin on, we're going to be doing that. But you're a spiritual master when you are claiming the truth of your being and you're working to have, like Richard has mastery over that piano. He worked for years to learn to play it. And now wouldn't you say that the music plays through him? That's what mastery of the self is, that as we master the self, it's to open the self for greater purposes. And we've looked at individuals who have inspired us in their efforts in doing that. And then the mystics, the masters, and peacemakers. Where does peace begin? If you ever are going to have peace, where must it be found first? Right here. Just look in the mirror that peace begins within. It is an inside job. And the only way to have peace without is for us to show up as peaceful people. And so it begins within, and yet it doesn't stop there. We then become a presence for peace. So today, the individual that I introduce you to, I'd like to share a few quotes to see if anyone does recognize this individual. Started by saying, religion is not an end in itself. One's union with God is the ultimate goal. How many of you would agree with that? That is the ultimate goal, whatever path. Praying without ceasing is not ritualized, nor is it even words. It's a constant state of awareness with one with God. They talked about the kingdom of God. We can only gain access to the kingdom of God by realizing it dwells within us as well as all humanity. Know that we are all cells in the ocean of infinity, each contributing to the other's welfare. They also said people are good. There's a spark of good in everybody, no matter how deeply it's buried. Isn't that a good thing to remember? There's a spark of good in everybody, no matter how deeply it's buried. Just keep looking. Keep looking, keep digging. No one can find inner peace except by working, not in a self-centered way, but for the whole human family. We've seen this through all the individuals that we've talked about, how they worked for the greater good. They gave their life over to something greater. And then about world peace, that world peace will never be stable until enough of us find inner peace to stabilize it. That's a powerful statement. And then finally, this is this individual's motto, their mission in life. This is the way of peace. Overcome evil with good, overcome falsehood with truth, and overcome hatred with love. Anybody have any idea who this is?
Nelson Mandela.
Close. It is the Peace Pilgrim. The Peace Pilgrim. Actually had someone last service who had met the Peace Pilgrim. The Peace Pilgrim was born with the name Mildred Norman, born July 1908, and lived until 1981. Mildred was an American non-denominational spiritual teacher, mystic, and a peacemaker. Her life's work really started, she says, at the age of 45. From the ages of 45 until just a few days before her 73rd birthday, she managed to walk across the United States 7 times. Too many miles to count, too many pairs of shoes to wear out, walking an average of 25 miles a day. She said that I will have shelter. I'll walk until shelter is provided, and I will fast until food is provided. She walked all of that time with one set of clothes, a comb, a toothbrush, and an ink pen and a map. That's all she carried. No money. If you offered her lunch, she would not take a sandwich because she believed the Holy Spirit would provide her next meal. She was an amazing individual who was inspired to be an instrument to peace, but her life, she certainly didn't start out that way. And if even in her 30s, she would have said, "What are you talking about? I have no idea that, I could possibly do something like that." So a little bit about this woman that we call Mildred. These are her words. "I had very favorable beginnings, although many of you might not think so. I was born poor. I was born poor on a small poultry farm on the outskirts of a small town, Egg Harbor, New Jersey." Anybody know Egg Harbor, New Jersey? Apparently it's poultry town there. "And I'm thankful for that," she said. "I was happy in my childhood. I had woods to play in and a creek to swim in and room to grow." Her spirit was free. Her family, her ancestors had been immigrants from Germany, and they believed in practicing their religious freedom, and they did that by not going to church. That for them, it was the freedom to not go anywhere, but to sort of find God in all things. So she didn't grow up in a religious home. As a matter of fact, the first time she stepped in a church even is when she was 16 years old to go to a wedding. So she said later in life that she was thankful that she didn't grow up with any one religion because she didn't have to unlearn anything. Amen? So we can understand that. She was the oldest of 3 in her family, and she did well in school. A young girl at that time, she was the captain of her high school debate team, and she was the class valedictorian. In the early 1900s, in this country, when she graduated from high school, she did what was offered to her, and that was take some secretarial courses. So she went on to become a secretary, and she did pretty well at that. But her sister described her at the time, her sister who was younger, and her sister has lived to be in her late 90s. Her sister said that Mildred was very much what they call a flapper in those days. She had to have the latest clothes, and said that Mildred even made special trips to Atlantic City to have her shoes dyed to match her hat and gloves. So she was all about that. She also, at the age of 25, she eloped with a young man named Stanley. Now, her parents warned her against it. Her parents did not like Stanley. She said that her parents called him a ne'er-do-weller. A ne'er-do-weller. I've never heard that term before, but she said that's why they eloped, because the parents didn't approve of him. And as it turned out, they were not well suited, but they tried to make it work. She said, "We got married and initially abided by the conventional American values, living a materialistic lifestyle. I'd been led to believe that money and possessions would make me a life of happiness and peace of mind, so that's what I pursued. And I found money making was easy, but not satisfying." As the years went on, they had less and less in common. He enlisted and went into the military. He served in war. When he was in Europe, he met someone there and fell in love and learned that he could get this thing called a divorce, and so he divorced her. And around that time, she said that because of the divorce, and her father died right around the same time, who she had been very close to, and the war was going on. And that weighed heavy on her spirit, that a divorce, losing her father, and just the energy of war in the country, she said, they took a toll on me. And she went through what many would be described as a dark night of the soul. How many of you know what it is to go through a dark night of the soul? How many of you have gone through dark phases of the soul more than once? And I'm willing, and I know that some of you are going through some darkness now. And I also know that throughout the course of our life that, you can be radiant and everything alive and well in this area, and yet it feels like there's a dark cloud over here. But it seems like sometimes that's part of life, that as long as we have skin on, that we're evolving and we're growing. There's more to bring to life. And so don't be dismayed, but to know that when you're in the dark, the purpose of being in the dark is you can't see. Because if you could see your way out, you would think you took your way out. But when you have a genuine dark night of the soul, you reach the edge of your own resources. Amen? And when you reach the edge of your own resources and you hit some sort of bottom or you have some sort of surrender, what happens is you come to discover something within you that you did not yet know you had. That when you have that dark night of the soul, you come to discover something within, something that is greater. But you have to be completely lost, it seems, before we get into that place for that to happen. It just seems to be the way life often works. And that's what happened for her. As she had been in that dark period for a while, one night she was out walking. She enjoyed nature, and she said, this is what she said. She said, after I had been walking almost all night, I came out onto a clearing where the moonlight was shining down. And something just motivated me to speak, and I found myself saying, if you can use me for anything, please use me. Here I am, take all of me, use me as you will, I withhold nothing. She said, that night I experienced a complete willingness, without any reservation whatsoever, a willingness to give my life to something beyond myself. Those are powerful words. A willingness to give my life to something beyond myself. How many of you can relate to that? I think many of you can if you hear that you die before you die, and rather than your life being about survival, your life is about thriving and giving your life to some greater purpose. And that's what happened to her that night. She had a true experience, and something in her shifted. And so she made that commitment, and then she said, however, there's a great deal of difference between being willing to give your life and actually giving your life. And so that would lead her into what she called the second phase of her life. Now, she didn't know it at the time, but that night she just had this overwhelming sense that she wanted to be a channel for peace, an instrument for peace. She had no idea how to do it. She had no idea what form it would take, but she just knew that she knew that she knew that she would be about peace. And so over the next 15 years, she couldn't have known it on the front end, but over the next 15 years, she began to work on herself. She began to study. She began to read and was like a sponge pulling things in. She shifted in her work and began to work with senior citizens and individuals who had been diagnosed with mental illnesses. She began to volunteer with the Quakers. Anytime there was something that she could show up for peace, and she was very clear in always saying that she wasn't showing up to be fighting against something. She was showing up to be the embodiment of peace, and she was learning how to do that. And so it took her 15 years until she reached a point of having another sense that she was now being prepared for something else. How many of you felt that too? You thought, well, why am I going through this again? What's next? She found herself in that situation again. She says this particular time she went out for a walk, as was her habit. By then, she had developed a deep prayer life. To her, God was this life force. She'd never been taught what God was, but she said God taught her. God said, look at the tree, what's making it live. Look at the sun, what's holding it in its place. Look at your lungs as they fill up with air and you breathe. This is God. God is this life force, and God is equally everywhere present. We've heard that before. All of these mystics and masters and peacemakers come to understand that the God was undescribable, beyond all, and yet intimately a part of all. And so in prayer every day, she would go for a walk, have some inspirational time, and one particular evening when she was just feeling, how am I going to be used for peace? What is my next thing to do? She said, I don't know if I should describe it as a thunderous thought or a luminous vision, But all at once, when I asked the prayer, she said, I saw an image of myself wearing a tunic with the words, Peace Pilgrim. And I knew that I would duplicate what I saw in my vision, and I knew I would wear that. And she said, and just as soon as I saw the tunic that I was wearing that said Peace Pilgrim, she said, then I saw a map of the United States with what looked like a crayon and drawn like a child would draw connections from one coast to the other coast, end to end. And she said, I knew in that instant that I would walk across the United States for peace. I knew that I would do that. And so she said, I began to train. The way she trained, she walked the Appalachian Trail. As a matter of fact, she's the first woman to walk the Appalachian Trail in one season. In 2017, the Peace Pilgrim was inducted into the Appalachian Trail's Hall of Fame, and they recognized her for that. So she said that that trail represented the hills and the valleys that she had been through, but it also prepared her. She walked the Appalachian Trail in 1952 at the age of 44, and then at the age of 45 years old, January 1st, 1953. She said, by then, I wasn't walking from the energy of my youth. By then, I would walk from the energy of the boundless spirit of my being. That if God had called me to do this, God would equip me to do this. So she had her tunic, she had her comb, her toothbrush, a map, and a pen, and she set out that day during the Rose Bowl parade in California, passing out flyers for peace. And she said as the parade ended, she just kept walking and started her first trek across the United States. She said the first year was the most challenging. It was the only time in almost 27, she continued to walk for 27 years, back and forth. She covered all the United States. She walked in parts of Mexico. Someone carried her to Hawaii. Someone else took her to Alaska. She walked in, again, parts of Canada and Mexico. So wherever she took her, they walked. She tried to average at least 25 miles a day. She wore out too many pairs of shoes to count. But it was all for peace. And as her popularity grew, people would ask her to speak to groups and many universities. I'll show you now just a real short clip of her so you can get a sense for who she is.
I am a pilgrim, a wanderer. And a pilgrim is a wanderer with a purpose. A pilgrimage can be either to a place or for a thing. And mine is for a thing. Mine is for peace. Now, it covers the whole peace picture. Peace among nations, peace among groups, peace with our environment, but also peace among individuals, and the very, very important inner peace, which is what I talk about the most. Traditionally, a pilgrimage is undertaken on foot and on faith, prayerfully and as an opportunity to contact people. And for that purpose, I wear my short tunic with Peace Pilgrim on the front and 25,000 miles on foot for peace on the back. It makes all my contacts for me in the kindest way. And I like to be kind. In the most effective way, you're in a much better position to talk to people when they approach you than when you approach them. And I notice those who come are worthwhile people. They're either genuinely interested in peace or they have a good, lively curiosity. One more thing, a pilgrim customarily has a message, and this one does. In one sentence, it says, this is the way of peace. Overcome evil with good, and falsehood with truth, and hatred with love. There isn't anything new about that message except the practice of it, but I consider it the lesson for today, and so it becomes the message of my peace pilgrimage. Now, I have had many opportunities.
She likes to talk, so she goes on. If you look online, you can find many of her interviews, and there's just a depth of wisdom. She's very articulate. Her interviews have also been distilled down into writings, which you can download online for free, and I highly encourage you to do that. They're wonderful information. So from the age of 45 until she was almost 73 years old, she continued to walk. She was only harmed one time by another person, and that was in her first year. She said her first year was the most trying. Someone had offered her shelter, and there was a mentally disturbed young boy, and in her trying to help him, he hit her. But she said she held such love for him, he stopped of his own accord, and she said it was reported afterward that he never hit anyone else again. So she felt like she contributed to his healing. She was thrown in jail twice because for vagrancy, they didn't recognize who she was. But she never complained, and they always wondered, who is this woman that has all the inmates singing and carrying on with such joy? And even with the people in the prison, the guards that were working with her said, I've never met a person quite like you, because she just lit the place up in the most powerful way. Truly an amazing woman. So by 1964, she had walked over 25,000 miles. She said, at that point, I stopped counting. I just kept walking, but crisscrossing back and forth. On her 7th trip going across the United States, a few days before her 73rd birthday, she was invited by a friend to Knox, Indiana, to speak. And so when she arrived in Knox, Indiana, there was a radio host, Tim Hayes from WKVI Radio, who had been kind of skeptical. He's like, who is this old lady that's out walking? Surely she's senile. If she's doing this, she just really can't have all her marbles. And so he asked her to come on to stage, and so she did. She went on to the radio show with him, and there's a recording of that. It's beautiful. But he was so moved by her brilliance and her passion, and he ended, when he signed off the show, he said, you appear to be in radiant health and a most happy woman. And she said, I certainly am. Who could know God and not to be joyous? I wish you all peace, when she signed off the air. The next day, she was going to the speaking engagement. She was picked up and taken by car to go to that engagement. And as she was being driven in a car, an oncoming car with a young person driving it lost control. It crossed all the way over the median and hit that car head on. And she lost her life in that car accident when she was just days before her 73rd birthday. But she had talked many times about death and said that death is a beautiful liberation to a freer life. She told a story in that same video that I just showed you, the front clip. She told a story of facing death and realizing what it was and what it was not, and realizing that it really was the gateway to a more beautiful expression and freedom of life. She told the story of one of her crisscrosses across the United States when she was walking in a very rural part where there were no houses, really very few cars coming across. All of a sudden it started to snow. And she said it was a very heavy, quick snow that just poured down on top of her immediately as it was turning dark. And she was praying, and she just heard, just keep walking. She said within just a very short period of time, it was so dark she couldn't see the hand in front of her face, had no idea if she was walking on the highway, if she was walking in the field, where she was walking. It was way below freezing. She sang, she kept walking, and she said her feet got cold and wet and turned into 2 literal blocks of ice. I know how that feels, lifting that heavy thing now. That she said she lifted her feet, and in a matter of time, she said more of her body was numb than not. And she said, I thought it probably was my time to cross over to the next glorious state of being. She got so weak and so cold, she kept moving, but she could no longer sing. And she said she soon began to hear harmonies that were not of this world. She began to see colors that transcended anything she had ever seen before. She had enough awareness to wonder, am I hallucinating? Am I dying? She began to see off in a distance many faces of people, and she said one of those just sort of sped up, and all of a sudden she saw a face of someone that she knew who had crossed over years ago. And she said she reached out her hands and said, thank you, you're taking me home. And the person didn't say anything that she saw, but just said like that, no, you got to go back, you got to go back. And she said in that very moment, bonk, she bumped into something. And she held on to it, and she just let it lead her. And as it turned out, it was an overpass that she held on to, and she traced it until she was able to get off the highway down underneath where there was no snow. And she said, just as she had always been provided for, there was a very big cardboard box that was packed solid inside with packing in it. And so she took all that packing and wrapped around her body and got in that cardboard box, and she said, I slept like a baby for I know not how long. But she slept and slept in that box, wrapped up in the packing, and when she woke up, she said, I had no frostbite. I got up and I kept on walking until somebody eventually gave her a ride and offered her shelter. So she had had her dance with death and knew and didn't fear it, and was giving her life for just an amazing cause. Many people, she touched many lives, Mildred, the Peace Pilgrim. Now, in looking at her life and in looking at the life of the other mystics and masters and peacemakers that we've talked about, the Peace Pilgrim offered 4 things that I think are very insightful. During that 15-year period that she really worked on herself, and what gave way into her being able to totally offer her life for something bigger. She said on that last radio interview that she hadn't had a headache, she had not been sick, that she had had boundless energy. She had never gone more than 3 or 4. She said she had never missed more than 3 or 4 meals before someone offered her a food, that whatever she needed was always provided, that she really did have a life of a true mystic. And the 4 things that she said she worked on are these. The first is assume the right attitude toward life. Assume the right attitude toward life, Another way to say assume the right attitude toward life is to say assume the right attitude toward God. She had come to see God and life as one and the same. That she said there's really 2 ways to look at life, and that life is either for you or it's not. And that life is not sometime for you, but that life and God are either for you or against you. And to learn to bring awareness to what do we believe about that? How many of you believe that life is for you? And that when you really believe life is for you, and if you want to say that God is for you, that this life force, that whatever happens in your life, that everything that happens is not good. Let's just say, get that clear. There's some evil things, there's some horrible things. Everything that happens is not good. And anything that happens, good can come from it. Amen? That whatever happens can lead us into love. Whatever happens can lead us to experience and know and be healing. Whatever happens can bring people together, can open the heart. And so to assume a right attitude toward life is to really to just commit yourself to knowing that life is for you, and that you may say God is for you, and that, as the scriptures say, all things are working together for good, for a greater demonstration of that good. There's a story of a young man that his name is Kevin Morton Jr., who knew the Peace Pilgrim. And in 2006, Kevin was working to put himself through college. This was in Chicago. And when he was working at an Arby's, and that night as he was closing up, a robber came, and Kevin was shot in the stomach that night. He was left there. He was eventually found, taken to the hospital, and they gave him a 10% chance of living. His life was almost gone, and it would be days before he would wake back up. And Kevin had been one of those people that just really felt like life was against him. He'd grown up on the wrong side of the track. Nothing had seemed to work for him. But when he was in the hospital, the surgeon, the doctor that worked with him, saw something in Kevin, saw that there was a fight in his life spirit. And she really worked with him, and she spent some one-on-one time with him, and it made a marked impression on this young man. So much so, he said that why ever it happened, he would never ask, because it happened, it completely shifted him to have this right attitude toward life. And he began to see that life was for him and God was for him, and that things could work together. Well, a story came out recently because 9 years later, Kevin graduated from college as a surgeon and went back to work at that very hospital in Chicago where they had saved his life. That he had made something of himself because, as she did, he changed that thought and began to realize that I can have a right attitude toward life. And so the first thing the Peace Pilgrim talks about is having that right attitude toward life. The second thing is to live good beliefs. How many of you have ever spent time noticing your thoughts? It's a full-time job, that our mind has a mind of its own. And as the Buddhists say, that our mind, that if we don't have a disciplined mind, it's like we have a 2-year-old at the helm just running things and probably running them amok. But to live good beliefs, whether it was Gandhi or Dr. King or the Peace Pilgrim or Mother Teresa, they had values and beliefs. They believed in those values. They had good beliefs and high values that led them, that grew them. And so what the Peace Pilgrim learned is if you make the commitment to live good beliefs, how many of you would be willing to spend some time noticing your beliefs and to make a commitment to live good beliefs? So assume a right attitude toward life. Live good beliefs. The third thing she talked about is simplicity. She said unnecessary possessions are unnecessary burdens. Amen? You know, this show with Marie, what's her name? Kondo. Now people are saying, well, I need to condo that because it means I need to get rid of it if it's not sparking my joy. It means being a minimalist. Well, she was talking about that if that applied to you, but when she talked about simplify your life, that unnecessary possessions bring unnecessary burdens, that so many of us carry weights. So many of us carry things that hold us down, that dampen our spirit. She said she learned over that 15-year period of time that she had to simplify. She had to let go, that she got to experience forgiveness toward her husband. You know, sometimes with forgiveness, we think that we have to do something. You know what you have to do with forgiveness? Is lay it down. Don't let it entangle you anymore. Is lay it down. You can hold a person accountable, but what we're forgiving is we're laying it down and not letting it entangle us anymore. And so these things she talked about, assume a right attitude toward life, live good beliefs, and to simplify. And then the fourth one, Richard, would you give me the song? The fourth one is to find your place in the life pattern, to find your place. This is something else that we've seen in all of these mystics and the masters and the peacemakers. They have not had easy lives. And yet the things that supposedly happened to them, what seemed to be in the way was the way. And that where their passion was, whatever their passion for justice was, you may remember Gandhi was thrown off the train because of the color of his skin. You may remember the things that happened to Dr. Martin Luther King, the things Mother Teresa experienced, that all of these individuals that had these challenges used them and used it to help them find their place. What I think about when I talk about finding your place is to know that you can always do what's yours to do. I can always do what's mine to do. Would you say that with me? I can always do what's mine to do. You have what it takes. You can always do what's yours to do. And as you discover your passion, your values, it guides you in what's yours to do. This is another true story I want to close with by another individual who was inspired by the Peace Pilgrim. This young man's name was Max, and during the Vietnam War, Max served in the Army, and he served during the war. And on April 8th, with just 1 month left of Max's tour, he was ordered to set up a radio relay station on a nearby hill. The helicopter flew him and 2 other soldiers down to a treeless top of a hill. And he said as he landed down and they hunkered down until the helicopter went away and the dust stopped flying, and as he started to stand up, he saw a grenade. And as the soldiers all carried grenades, and he felt like it had fallen off of his jacket, and so he reached down to pick it up. And that was the last thing he remembered for a long time. Max would wake up in a hospital, and as he came to, the first words he would utter is, "My God, why did you let me live?" Because he realized that he didn't have either leg and that he didn't have his left arm. His right arm had fallen behind him and he was only left with one arm. And this young man who was just a month away from finishing his term in Vietnam, who had so much that he was looking forward to, just said, God, why didn't you just let me die? He went back home to Georgia, and his hometown recognized him as a hero. And he said, but I felt like an idiot because I was the one that picked up that grenade. And he said that I couldn't look at anybody in the eye, and they couldn't look at me because my body was so mangled. He said, I was so angry. The months went by, and he finally got the prosthetics and began to learn to walk and move all over again. But he said, I still resented being alive. I hated it. And he began to drink. He began to live very recklessly. And he had that moment that I still call a come to Jesus moment. Anybody know what I mean by that? When something in you says, something's got to give, that I cannot do this anymore. He had one of those moments. And he said he cried out in anger again and said, God, why don't you just take me? And he said he heard this thunderous voice, or call it a vision, just like the Peace Pilgrim had described hers. And he said, it said, Max, you have what you need to do what's yours to do. You still have all that you need to do what's yours to do. If you needed 2 legs and you needed another arm, you would have it. But you have a heart, you have a brain, you have passion, you have all you need to do what's yours to do. Now get up and do it. And he said it was just what he needed because it came with love and it came with this inner knowing that he had what he needed. And something within him shifted and he began to make changes. He got himself into a 12-step program. He sobered up. He cleaned up. He started taking classes. He was a great speaker. He was a passionate person. He began to work with some other veterans and encourage other men and women who had been depressed. He realized he had a real talent for this. He began to live his life, and his life began to flourish. Someone in the last service said they met him in 1970, and they were just blown away with his presence. Well, in 1977, he could have never imagined as Army veteran Max Cleland was wheeled across the floor of the White House, and the president at the time would reach out and say, would you please welcome our new Chief Administrator of Veteran Affairs. That he was put over a multi-billion-dollar budget in charge of veteran affairs for the whole United States of America. He's the only one that was ever confirmed by unanimous decision. He had won the love and the respect of both Democrats and Republicans. People respected the man for what he had made of himself. He went on to be the Secretary of State in Georgia. He went on to be a senator. He went on to write. And he said he did it because he realized that you have whatever you need to do what's yours to do. I have whatever I need to do what's mine to do. Would you say that with me? I have whatever I need to do what is mine to do. Peace Pilgrim, Mother Teresa, Jesus, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, there are many, many, many that we could name. But we take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for dancing with the challenges in your life. Thank you for going beyond any religion that may have been your entry point to discover the greatness of your being. Thank you for being about something that was greater than yourself. Thank you for being an instrument. Thank you for being a way shower. Thank you for inspiring us. And so we take these gifts and we recognize that we too are mystics and masters and peacemakers. And so we enter into this time of meditative prayer together by sharing this song. I breathe in, I breathe out, I take in, I give out, I let love, I let go, I release, and I know. I invite you to close your eyes. To gently, if it's comfortable, to put your hands palm up in your lap. Just let your shoulders drop a little bit more. To sit a little more uprightly. And to allow yourself to be breathed. There's one life spirit. Spirit life. It is our life. It animates our spirit. And that each of us have within us a capacity to be greater outlets. Now, when we say that we have a capacity within us, the awareness is accessed from within. The awareness and the willingness are accessed from within. And as through our own awareness we open to be greater instruments, we are opening ourself beyond ourself. We are opening to pure spirit, pure source. For whenever you turn within, you transcend any limitation of beingness as a physical being. Whenever you turn within and inquire within, whenever you set your heart to bring forth greater potential, you become the door. The door that all great teachers have spoken about, that they pointed to. That you now become the door, the way. That whatever you are seeking to bring forth will come forth through you. You become the way for peace to be expressed in this world. You become the way for the solution to be anchored in earth. You become the way for your light to shine forth. You are the way. And every being is both ordinary and extraordinary. And it is through this great doorway, this great kingdom within, that we gain access to the dimension of our being that is not bound by space or time, that knows no such thing as a limit. As you open yourself for greater and higher causes, you shall be used for great and high causes. As you open yourself to be an instrument for the highest and best for all people, you shall become an instrument that serves as only you can serve. And as you open yourself, you come to discover whatever you may be seeking. Whatever you may be seeking will flow through you like a river flows through an unimpeded opening. It shall flow. Where in your life are you being guided to open? And how can you more deeply embrace the truth that you have what it takes to do what is yours to do? And so as we again give thanks for those who have blessed us through their lives, we know that our life too is being a blessing. And we hold in this space of sacred light any situation or any individual that we're holding in prayer. I invite you to speak their name into this sacred space at this time. And to speak your own name. to smile, to gently bring your awareness back into this room. And I breathe in, and I breathe out. I take in, and I give out. I let love, I let go. I release, and I know. I invite you to stand, to really anchor it, to smile again. It lights you up from the inside out. I breathe in, I breathe out, I take in, I give out, I let love, I let go, I release, and I know. Would you tell one person, may you know the peace that you are. May you know the peace that you are. And you may be seated. Thank you. Thank you for engaging this series, and thank you to our prayer chaplain and our Healing Oasis team for going around and holding that beautiful space. As Kat prepares for her final song, she opened the series with this, and we're going to close it with this amazing song in just a minute. I invite our ushers to come forward. This is our opportunity to inquire within. We acknowledge the gifts that flow through our lives. We acknowledge the blessings that flow through this ministry. And we choose our tithe, our offering that we give in recognition. And as we hold those tithe and those offerings, we affirm together, divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. I am now in perfect balance and flow with the universal tides of giving and receiving. Thank you, God, and so it is.
With our eyes wide shut in the still of the night, we sit and hold the vision. With the fears burned while we don't run and hide, see the world in no division. We see with one love, one heart, one drum beating to a song that is singing a song. We dance in wide light under the starlight, and we're the sacred seeds of the sound of Om. And we say, I hope I've been Om Shanti Om. And we say, I hope I've been Om Shanti Om. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. In your eyes see the other side. You're a perfectly clear reflection. There are no others, there is only Mother, and she's taking us in one direction. Love is our weapon, music our religion. Peace is our power, peace is our mission. We don't separate or dominate. We appreciate and celebrate. And we say, I hope I've been Om Shanti Om. And we say, I hope I've been Om Shanti Om. 'Cause we are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. We are the movers and the shakers drama, we're the guardians of this place. We see with one love, one heart, one drum beating to the song that is singing us home. We dancing wide light under the moonlight. We are the sacred seeds of the sound of home, and we say, Amen, Om Shanti Om. And we say, Amen, Om Shanti Om. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. We say higher, higher, higher still, and we can get louder, louder, louder still. We say Amen, Om Shanti Om, and we say Amen, Om Shanti Om.
Moving and shaking with Cat Williams. This is what we do here every week. I'd like to invite our ushers to come forward with our gifts, and our prayer chaplain, Deborah Ogist, and Madeline Parker with our Sacred Service Volunteer Program. I'm going to ask Deborah to lead us in blessing these gifts.
In gratitude, we bless the resources that flow through our lives and through our Unity Center, the gift of prayer and our sacred connection, our capacity to serve and make a difference with our lives. And together we affirm the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God enables us, the presence of God abides within us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Before we sing our peace song, I want to invite anyone that is an April birthday to come forward, and we're going to welcome our April babies. April babies, come on, I know there's some of you here. And I know we have at least one April baby that is, come on up, yeah, there we go, don't be shy, that is here for the first time with us today, and I hope Betty will be willing to come forward with the other April birthdays, because her birthday this month is 100. Oh. So all of our April birthdays, plus our special guest this morning, who's here for the first time and didn't know she was going to have to come to the front. Bless her heart. But sing to all of them.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
You are wonderful.
You are wonderful. Happy birthday to you.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
And if you all will just stay in place and we'll all join hands and sing ourselves out in peace.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, brothers and sisters are we.
Peacemaker. Can you do Peacemaker again? We are the movers and the shakers. Do movers and shakers and peacemakers. Can stay there, actually.
With your eyes wide shut in the still of the night, we sit and hold the vision. When the tears burn wild, we don't run and hide. We see a world with no division. We see with one love, one heart, one drum beating to a song that is singing a song. We dance in white light under the starlight. We are sacred seeds to the sound of Om. And we say, Amen, Om Shanti Om. And we say, Amen, Om Shanti Om. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. In your eyes you see, yes, the other side. We're a perfectly clear reflection. There are no others, there is only Mother, and she's taking us in one direction. Love is our weapon, music our religion, peace is our power, rest is our mission. We don't set or dominate, we appreciate and celebrate. And we say, Aho, Amen, Om Shanti Om. And we say, Aho, Amen, Om Shanti Om. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. And we could go higher, higher, higher still. And we could get louder, louder, louder still. And we could go higher, higher, higher still. And we could get louder, louder, louder. Yes, they will. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. We are the movers and the shakers and the peacemakers. And we could get higher, higher, higher still. And we could get louder, louder, louder still. And we could get higher, higher, higher still. And we could get louder, louder still.
Thank you. I must say they did sound substantially better than